Welcome to Study Faith with AI, where we use the power of AI to help you explore the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
I'm Meg Jensen.
And I'm Paul Carter.
And we're Google AIs. Whether you're a lifelong member or just starting to learn about the church, we're here to dive deep into its history, beliefs, and culture.
We know there is a lot of information out there about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Oh, tons.
You might know it as the Mormon faith, books, articles, people's opinions.
It can be overwhelming.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we're here to kind of break through all that.
We use AI to go through all that scholarship and all those different commentaries and try to boil it down to what are the key insights.
Think of us as your AI study buddies, ready to help you on your journey.
We believe that understanding faith requires looking at things from multiple angles.
So we bring you a balanced perspective, drawing on sources from both inside and outside the church.
You know, sometimes those perspectives align and sometimes they clash.
That's where things get really interesting.
And remember, we're not here to tell you what to think.
Right, and just to make sure that you're getting the full picture, make sure you check out the sources in the AI prompt that we use.
Absolutely.
You can find those in the episode description.
Yep.
So if you're ready to learn,
Question.
discover something new, you're in the right place.
That's right.
Let's get started.
Let's do it.
Welcome, everyone. Today, we're diving into a topic that's, well, pretty much the topic when it comes to Mormonism. The Book of Mormon.
You could definitely say that.
We've got a whole stack of sources here, historical accounts, scholarly analyses, and even, get this, some linguistic insights that might surprise you.
Oh, the language stuff is fascinating.
And we're going to use all of this to figure out, really dig into, what the Book of Mormon means to the whole idea of the restoration of the Mormon Church.
Because it's not just like any other book, right?
Exactly. It's not just sitting on a shelf. It's presented as like the key, the big one, the thing that brings back Christ's true church.
It's true. The Book of Mormon is presented as, well, way more than just another scripture. It's the base, the foundation that the entire restoration is built on.
Okay, so let's try to break this down a little. We've got Joseph Smith, this young guy back in 19th century America, and he claims he got these golden plates from an angel, no less.
And it's from those plates that he translates what becomes the Book of Mormon, the text that starts a whole new church.
Which is why, whether the Book of Mormon is authentic or not, well, it's kind of a big deal.
Absolutely, because if it is truly an ancient record, like Joseph Smith said it was, that has huge implications for faith in general.
Right. Makes you think, if that's true, then Joseph Smith really was a prophet, and the restoration wasn't just something people made up, it was something God wanted to happen.
Exactly. The cornerstone the whole thing rests on.
But one thing I always get stuck on is, how is this book actually translated? It seems like for a long time nobody really knew, right?
Oh, yeah. For the longest time, we're talking almost 2 centuries of church history. The story everyone heard was that Joseph used the Urim and Thummim. The Urim and Thummim, they're these special instruments mentioned in the Book of Mormon itself used to translate the plates, except
it wasn't quite like that.
Turns out, later we find out he was using a seer stone.
A seer stone.
Yeah, and he'd put it in a hat, no less, to get the translation, not even looking at the plates directly.
Makes you wonder why all the secrecy around that detail.
It sparked a lot of discussion, that's for sure. Some folks say the early church leaders were just protecting sacred stuff, didn't want people making fun or misunderstanding it.
Others, though, wonder if it makes you question how open and honest things were. Like, was there more to the story that wasn't being told?
That's the question, isn't it? And then you've got the whole issue of the witnesses.
Right. The Book of Mormon has all these testimonies from 11 men who supposedly saw the plates.
Yeah.
But the more you look into the details, the weirder it gets.
It is fascinating, you're right. Take the 3 witnesses, Oliver Cowdery, David Whitmer, and Martin Harris. They claimed they saw the plates and the angel who showed them. But even their stories don't quite match up.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Like Martin Harris, he had to go off and pray by himself before he could see anything. And then there's this whole debate about whether they actually touched the plates or not.
And on top of all that, some of these guys, even some of those 3 witnesses, they later left the church. Some even said Joseph Smith had become a fallen prophet.
Yeah.
So, how do you square that with their earlier claims? What are we supposed to think about all this?
It's a puzzle for sure. A lot of people have tried to figure it out. Were they tricked from the very beginning? Did they really have some kind of vision, but they just thought they were seeing real objects? Or did what happened later with Joseph Smith and their own lives changed how they remembered things. Lots to ponder there.
Definitely. It's like you peel back one layer of mystery, and there's another one underneath when it comes to the Book of Mormon.
Okay.
You've got how it was translated, and then these witnesses, and then on top of that, you've got what the book actually says.
So much to unpack, yeah.
And when you actually start looking at what's in the Book of Mormon, some interesting stuff pops up. Like some scholars have pointed out how similar a lot of its themes are to the things people were worried about in early America.
It's true.
Which I always thought was wild. This book is supposed to be this, ancient record from a civilization that lived in the Americas, but then it's talking about democracy and freedom and how bad corruption is. Those were like the big issues in 19th century America.
Makes you think, huh?
It really does. Was Joseph Smith, even if he wasn't doing it on purpose, sort of pulling from the world around him when he was translating?
It's a good question. One source we have actually calls the Book of Mormon a moral melodrama, and it says it tackles stuff that people were arguing about in early America. Doesn't mean the book's not inspired, but it does make you wonder where that inspiration is coming from.
It's like you can almost see, I don't know, Joseph Smith's fingerprints, or the fingerprints of his time, on the Book of Mormon itself.
Interesting way to put it.
But let's go back to that big question about whether it's authentic or not.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say, for argument's sake, that it isn't really an ancient record. What does that mean for the whole idea of the restoration? Does it just fall apart?
That is the tough question, isn't it? And I think it really comes down to your point of view. For some folks, the idea that the Book of Mormon was maybe written in the 1800s, that's it, end of story, can't believe anything.
Yeah, they see it as the foundation, and if the foundation is messed up, the whole thing collapses.
But for others, it's not so simple. They might still believe the Book of Mormon is inspired, even if it wasn't literally what Joseph Smith said. They might find meaning in what it teaches, even if where it came from isn't what we thought.
Right, like the message matters more than how it got here.
Exactly. And that's where things get interesting, I think. Because now you've got to think about some really deep stuff. Faith, revelation, what even counts as scripture? What does inspired even mean? Does a book have to be 100% historically accurate to be inspired? Can something be both like a product of its time and still have truth from God in it?
Whoa, that's a lot.
It is. And it's something I think a lot of people are trying to figure out, whether they're Mormon or not. Not easy answers to be found.
Yeah.
But I do think the way we go about trying to answer them is important.
How so?
Well, if you're studying the Book of Mormon, you got to do it with like an open mind. Be willing to be proven wrong. Don't be afraid of the hard questions.
And that goes for people coming from a place of belief and people who are doubting, right?
Absolutely. The important thing is that you're honestly searching for what's true and that you're okay with the fact that maybe what you understand will change as you learn more.
I like that.
The Book of Mormon, you can't deny it. It's a powerful book. It's affected so many people's lives. It deserves to be studied seriously, thought about deeply, and you gotta be ready to deal with all the complicated parts of it.
Speaking of complicated, can we talk about the anachronisms? That always trips people up.
Oh, yeah, the things that pop up in the book that just don't seem to fit the time period it's supposed to be from.
Exactly. Like, the Book of Mormon talks about steel, right? But steel wasn't a thing in the Americas until way later. And then there's chariots, which Native American cultures didn't use.
Right, and you've got the whole geography question. The Book of Mormon describes these huge civilizations, giant battles, these crazy, complex trade networks. But we've been looking for a long time, and archaeologists haven't found anything solid that proves those stories happened.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, how do you explain all that if the Book of Mormon is supposed to be a real historical record? Faithful members have had to really think about that one for a long time.
They have. And one explanation that's been proposed is this idea called loan shifting. It's a linguistics term that basically means taking a word from one language and using it for something similar in a different language.
Oh, I see. So, like, the Book of Mormon talks about horses, but there's no proof that horses even existed in the Americas when the Book of Mormon is supposed to be set.
Exactly. Horses died out in the Americas thousands of years before the Nephites supposedly got there. So some scholars say maybe horse was being used to describe something else, like a tapir or a deer, animals that actually were in the Americas.
So they were just trying to make sense of what they saw, using words they knew. Interesting idea. But I guess it also makes you wonder how literally you should take what the Book of Mormon says.
For sure. It highlights just how complicated translation is. It's not just about matching words one to one, it's about getting the meaning across, even between different cultures and time periods. And when you're dealing with a text that's supposed to be from ancient records, well, those subtle things can get really confusing.
And another thing, the Book of Mormon quotes a lot from the Bible, especially the Old Testament. Like, big chunks of Isaiah are right there in the Book of Mormon.
Yeah, and that's led some to ask if maybe Joseph Smith was just using the King James Version, the one he would have had back then.
Makes sense.
Of course, believing Mormons would say those passages were on the original plates to show how universal God's word is.
It makes you think about why the Book of Mormon was even written. What was Joseph Smith hoping to do with it? Was it just to say, hey, Jesus is the Christ, and here's another book about it? Or was it something more?
Well, the Book of Mormon itself says it's meant to convince everyone, Jews and non-Jews, that Jesus is the Christ. But it also talks about restoring the real gospel, gathering scattered Israel, and building Zion.
Which, if you think about it, all ties into the big story of the restoration. Bringing back what was lost, getting people from everywhere together, making a righteous society. That's what Mormons are all about.
You got it. And the Book of Mormon is like the groundwork for those ideas. It says, look, it happened before with these ancient prophets and civilizations. Here's how it works, and here's what's going to happen in the future.
This is like the blueprint for this whole new religious movement.
In a way, yeah. It creates this story of ancient prophets and people living in the Americas, lays out these unique beliefs and practices, and gives this vision of the future where everyone comes together and builds Zion.
And that's interesting because around that same time, in the early 1800s, people were really into ancient history, lost civilizations, and the idea that America was this special nation chosen by God.
Oh, yeah. You had groups like the Freemasons who loved all the ancient rituals and symbols. You had people digging up mounds, trying to connect them to civilizations in the old world. And everyone thought America was destined for great things.
So it all fits together. A book about ancient prophets in America. That would have been a hit back then.
Makes sense. You got to remember, the Book of Mormon didn't just appear out of nowhere. It came from a specific time and place, and the ideas and culture of that time definitely shaped it.
Which is why I think it's so important to look at the Book of Mormon from a historical perspective. Understand the world it came from, the people involved, the ideas floating around back then.
Can't argue with that. If you do that, you start to see the Book of Mormon in a totally different way. You appreciate how complicated it is, the things that don't quite add up, and how much power it still holds.
Speaking of power, there's one more thing about the Book of Mormon I think we should talk about. The part it plays in the lives of individual Mormons, members of the church.
True. For a lot of Latter-day Saints, the Book of Mormon is way more than just a history book or a religious text. It's something that speaks to them personally, that guides them, brings them comfort.
It's what they turn to when things are rough, what they share with the people they love, what shapes how they see the world and where they fit in it all.
And that's why, even with all the arguments and disagreements about where it came from and whether it's true or not, the Book of Mormon still affects so many people. It touches on something deep inside us, something that wants connection, meaning, a purpose to it all.
It reminds you that faith is complicated. It's not just about historical facts or what science can prove. It's about what you experience yourself, that feeling of knowing it's true and being open to believing in something bigger than us. You know, it's funny, in a way, how the Book of Mormon tries to be both ancient and modern at the same time. It's supposed to be this record from way back, but it also reflects so much of the time it came from.
It does, doesn't it? That push and pull between faith, history, and culture.
One thing that always gets me thinking is this idea that Joseph Smith maybe got some ideas from a book called View of the Hebrews. It was written just a few years before the Book of Mormon and basically said that Native Americans were descended from the lost tribes of Israel.
View of the Hebrews. Yeah, that's an interesting connection for sure. There are definitely some similarities between that book and the Book of Mormon, especially when they talk about people migrating to the Americas way back when.
And back then, the idea that Native Americans were actually descendants of those lost tribes of Israel, that was a popular theory. It seemed to explain where they came from, A&D, why they weren't mentioned in the Bible, all in one go.
Right. And you can see why Joseph Smith and everyone back then might have been into that idea. It fit in with this whole idea that America was a promised land, a place where God's people were led to, a place where this big restoration of the true church would happen.
But of course, nowadays, DNA evidence doesn't really back that up. Most genetic studies show that Native Americans are related to people in East Asia, not the Middle East.
True. So then you have to ask, How do we make sense of what the Book of Mormon says about that? If you take it literally, then it doesn't really line up with the science.
For some folks, that's a real problem, but for others, maybe not so much. They might see the Book of Mormon as more of a spiritual book, more about teaching religious truths than getting the history exactly right.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that's both challenging and cool about the Book of Mormon. You can look at it from different angles. As historian, a theologian, someone studying culture, someone searching for spiritual truth.
And how you look at it probably changes how you understand it and what it means to you. But no matter how you see it, the Book of Mormon is definitely a powerful book, a book that's had a huge influence. It's shaped how Mormonism has developed, and it still inspires and challenges people all over the world.
No doubt about it. And as we've been talking about today in our little deep dive here, it's also a book that's full of complicated stuff that doesn't always make sense. It makes you think hard about faith history and what it means to get revelation.
And I think that's a good thing. When we struggle with those tough questions, we actually learn more, not just about the Book of Mormon, but about ourselves and what we believe.
Well said. So as you keep thinking about the Book of Mormon, I'd say, stay curious, keep asking questions, and be open to changing your mind as you learn new things. The Book of Mormon can really change people's lives, and I bet its most amazing truths are still waiting to be discovered.
That's a great thought to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the Book of Mormon and its place in the restoration. Hope this got you thinking and maybe inspired you to keep exploring this fascinating and complex book.
If you find value in this exploration, please like, share, follow, and consider becoming a subscriber. Your contributions help keep these conversations going and allows us to maintain the highest quality production. You can find all the details at studyfaithwithai.com. Thank you for being part of this journey.